Working. Yeah, it is working. Perfect. So thank you, Shelley, for participating of our research. And again, I'd like to like clarify that all the data is going to be preserved. And first of all, I'd like to meet you a little bit more. So, what's your name? What's your role? What's your background? I want to understand of you a little bit more.
Also, I'm Shelley Bella. So I'm the Director of the Financial Performance and Business Partnering team. So I oversee essentially two teams. One's the Finance Business Partners. So we have 8 Finance Business Partners that support each of the faculty and portfolio leadership teams in reporting to them what their results are, assisting with all their budgeting and forecasting, and they're like their sort of financial strategic advisory partners in whatever's going on within their space. And then they're supported by the other half of my team, which is the financial planning and analysis function. So that's a team of analysts that are responsible for generating all of our reporting, doing all the underlying analysis of different things. That area generates all our executive group reporting, so the reports that we take to both the executive group and then our various other governing bodies, being the Finance and Facilities Committee, and then ultimately to Council, which is like the board. So I've been here for just over 2 years. So I joined just as Group Finance had finished their transformations. This was a newly formed team that I inherited. So my background is obviously I'm an accountant, been an accountant for a number of years now. Most of my previous time has been sort of in the entertainment media sector. So I've worked at Ticketek and then Disney, and did a few roles also in sort of professional services type functions. So this was the first role where I've been in the university sector. So it's been a big learning curve. Obviously it's very different and has a lot of its own unique complexities to it. So yes, it's been very interesting.
Yeah. Why have you changed the fields that we're working?
Well, I mean, I definitely didn't want to continue in entertainment, having worked for 2 of the sort of best entertainment organisations that you could work with. Obviously, that's a smaller market. Actually, it was good timing when I changed because that was before COVID. So obviously, COVID's been a huge disruptor for those industries. So when I originally left Disney, so that was 3 years ago. So I've been there for 7 years or something. I made a conscious decision to move to a product-based business because I hadn't done any product business. And so the more senior you are, the harder it is to sort of move between industry sectors because people obviously want people with experience. So I took on a maternity contract role to get that experience. And then that was full on because that was when COVID hit, and working again for a very large, complex business, and then COVID hitting, which completely disrupted. And you can imagine in my area, which is all the financial planning and analysis and that forward-looking budgeting and forecasting, all those sort of changes in COVID profoundly impact the results of an organisation. So it makes your area very busy because you've got so many different scenarios to think of or numbers to plan or what have you. So that was pretty tough. So I didn't want to stay in that organisation in the end. And then the lady did return from mat leave. And then this role came up. It's quite local to me, so I just live at Pinball. It's obviously a very wholesome industry as well. It's good to be a part of. And so, yeah, it was when the opportunity came up and I looked into it, I was like, oh, actually, it's quite a complex business, having not only the university, but we have the hospital. We have all the different controlled entities with all the, UNMQ that oversees a lot of, the little eateries. We've got the U-Bar it's the university owned. We've got the hotel and MGSM, and so it just sort of covers. It's like a little mini city, and I was like, oh no, that's really interesting. So I knew I'd be doing a different sector, and didn't target this, but at the time when I was looking, this came across my desk, and then I was like, oh, actually, it's really interesting and it's very convenient, and so from there, that's where I ended.
That's great. That's great. And in your previous experience, were you used to work in a flexible schedule as well?
I've been very lucky with flexibility in my career. So I'm a mother of 3, and I've been very fortunate to work for organisations that were allowing me to work part-time. So once I had children, I worked 3 days a week. and was able to maintain senior roles even at 3 days a week. I've had one role I did in the early days when my kids were quite little. I job shared as well with another colleague who was also then a mum, and so we sort of worked half the day each, which worked well. And then my role before this obviously is when COVID hit, so that was a lot of remote working as well. So yeah, having been very fortunate that I've had those opportunities, I do want to embrace flexible work. I think it is a good thing that COVID shook things up and has made everyone rethink, how work can be done. So yes, I'm obviously happy that, we're now embracing flexible work here.
And you chose like to have like flexible work position. So since when you were like before, like it was part of your decision, or was something that was like casual? It happened, like you applied.
It was of my decision, yeah. So I actively was like, I don't want to work full time when I have young children. I wanted to primarily make sure that I could be with them. So at Disney, it was an amazing role that I had so much flexibility. My boss just completely trusted me and what I did, and he just knew I'd deliver all the time, never miss anything. So I actually used to, of the 3 days that I worked, I used to work in school hours. So I used to drop my kids at school, then go into the office. So we're in the city there. So drive, had a parking spot, parked, then left in early afternoon to pick them up for 3 o'clock or 3:15 bell. Then I'd do all the activities in the afternoon, and then I'd work late at night to make up my hours and still get everything done. So I've had extreme flexibility in my career and extreme trust in the people that I've reported into that just knew that. So I requested that. So the roles that I went in after children were part-time roles, going in to say I only work 3 days a week, and then the one at Disney, it then became more flexible over time as that trust built up, and as peaks and troughs with how the business worked as well, busyness, and then I approached my boss in a period that was a bit quieter, saying, would you mind if I did this and that? And then it was fine, and then it worked out that I just did that all the time. So for me, it was full on, because flexibility is full on, like it's hard work. So I literally, often my days were 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. because you're up early, and then if I was really busy, I wouldn't start working till 8:30 at night, and then you work through. And so I look back now and I think I don't know how I did it, but at the time it was worth it, because my children didn't actually realise that I was really a working mum, because I was around a lot of the time, and then just juggled things at night time, and then obviously while they're at school they didn't really realise. So.
How old are your kids? Your kids?
Now they're all growing up. They're 12, 14, and 16. My last one in primary school, so next year they'll all be in high school. So so that's it's been a long journey then doing that. So only in the last 3 years have I returned to full-time work.
I got it. And how was the policy that you used to work before? Like, was 100% flexible, like you could choose, or like how was the organization, the flexible work policy that you used to have before?
So that was in a different organization.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have. I don't believe they actually. I'm not familiar whether they had an actual flexible policy. It was very much employee by employee basis. So I was lucky where I was, but I was very aware there were other women that got no flexibility. So other employers, I should say, has been as well. So it depended who your boss was, what was the nature of your role, and whether it worked. And so there wasn't that equality in that sense. I was just fortunate with the relationships that I had and the type of role I had that I was able to do that. So.
And how is it here?
So here, they obviously previously did have a policy, and that was on a basis of people requesting of their managers and what have you, if they wanted to make certain alternate arrangements. But obviously with COVID, we had that period of remote working, and now we've been trying to encourage people to come back. So I'm sure other people have told you that within group finance, we've actually developed a flexible work charter, because so myself and Andrew Seros, who I don't know if you've met him yet, he's the Director of Financial Operations team. So the two of us have the larger teams within the group finance. And we experienced some issues with the remote working and our staff working from home. It wasn't working for us. So, we approached Ben to sort of say, we feel like we've got to put some guidelines around how we're working, because this is not successful for us. Like, it's killing us that our staff are remote and who knows what they're doing. So we developed this charter, and in the end, what we've done is we've landed saying that, and like the broader, you obviously know the university got the broader arrangements, but it's up to each area to work out how it works for them. So for us, we've said, well, group finance needs to have 2 compulsory days in the office. That's Tuesday, Thursday, because you hear that a lot with people going, well, I went into the office and no one was there, so I go in, so then everyone walks at home. So we're like, okay, we want to come into the office, we want to be around other humans, have that opportunity to collaborate, do the bonding and training and developing, mentoring, what have you. So we said, let's have compulsory days so we know we're going to interact. And then each team could decide then how it worked for them. So for me, I didn't feel like 2 days was enough for my team for where we're at. So ours is 3 days compulsory in the office, and my team comes in. So this is the FP&A team. The business partners are a little bit different because they're scheduled, because they work so much with different stakeholders across the uni. So they don't sit in this building, they sit with their stakeholders. So their schedules need to be fluid to what their stakeholders require in the meetings they've got to attend. But the FP&A team who do sit in here, they're Monday, Tuesday, Thursday working in the office. And the caveat is, we can review this every sort of 6 months. And also it's subject to, if we're in very busy periods, that we might say, hey, it makes more sense to flex this up and everyone works in the office 4 or 5 days. So we're entering our very busy budget season where it may end up being, hey guys, can we just come in? Because it's just easier to collaborate, like just to check and, bounce things off and what have you. Then when people are remote, you try and find them all and bring them together. It's just harder. So yeah, that's where we've currently landed. And then obviously there's flexibility around start and end time. So we've created that you should be able to assume that between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. a person is absolutely available and can attend a meeting or what have you. So that allows for people who want to start later or finish earlier or vice versa, that they can do that. And there's a common period of work in between where people in advance can schedule those meetings and things like that. So.
And how do they receive, like when you guys went to talk to them and say that like, we are in a budget moment, we have to come like more often?
Well, we haven't said that yet, so I'll have to monitor that to see whether we will, but we've talked it through saying that could be a possibility. So it's up to me to decide, it's up to Andrew to decide for his team. Like if something happens that he feels like actually we need to flex this again for this period, let's now adopt this working approach. So we haven't yet done that. I don't know if I will do it. I'm just saying it's an example where we might go, hey, I do actually want you all in here more. And that's just part of the policy that we're entitled to do that, because it's all on the premise that it needs to work for both the employer and the employee. So if there are things that are happening that I feel are affecting our deliverables, then that's our right to sort of say, hey, for this we do want you to do it. But we haven't done that.
I was doing because I imagine that is coming, the budget period now. Yeah.
It doesn't mean we'll definitely increase from 3. It's just a possibility that if I believe the need's there, because things are feeling hard to get done, or we're missing things and staying up late waiting for people to give you stuff and you review, you know what I mean? Because that's what happens. And they don't kind of see the roll-on impact that it has if they don't meet a deliverable. Then that's when I'd be like, okay, we need to be in the office, but I don't know.
Yeah, you have said a few, but like what would be like reasons? Like if you have to think like possible reasons that would make you take this decision, how would be, like you have said a few already, but I want to understand more.
Yeah, I think that's what it mainly is. If I'm feeling that people are taking too long to deliver something, if I can see that they're unsure of how to execute on a task or something like that. So my team's actually had quite a bit of turnover in it. So we've got a lot of new people. So new people need to be supported. And so, when you onboard people, the team need to be in so they can be in flesh next to you to see on your screen how you do things, you can talk. Do you know what I mean? It just is so much. Obviously, COVID proved it is possible to do things remotely, but that was like survival mode. It was just out of necessity. You had to do it. That doesn't mean it's the best way to carry out your work. And so I believe that, because we've got a lot of newness, it's better to be able to onboard those people, train, develop them, and for our meetings and what have you. So what's happened sort of last year, which preempted us saying let's develop a charter as well, is that teams, staff weren't delivering things on time. It wasn't to the quality that was expected. I had no oversight over what they were and weren't working on, what were they prioritising properly. Were they sitting there for hours on end doing something and sort of struggling, or did they actually do it really quick that they were out all day at the beach, or do you know what I mean? So I'm getting stuff late. My hours are completely out of control. I've got no proper control over, because everyone's just so, from my perspective, loose around, and you look at their status update and they've been offline or what, and then you don't even know, well, have they even got it turned on or not? Like, why are they not working yet? So with some stuff, by midday, you still couldn't get in contact with them. Wow. And you're like, what's going on here? And, and these are stuff, and because what's happened in my area is I've had a change in, so the person that oversees FP&A is the head of FP&A. They're reporting to me. So they're responsible for FP&A. So we've had some movement in that person. So it's actually not my job to know what all the analysts under him are doing. But because that person's changed, we've had a few issues with that, I do sometimes have to deal direct with different staff, and ultimately I'm still trying to get them all to deliver something to me. So it's not my place to fully know, and because they could have had an agreement with their manager and he hasn't told me, or do you know what I mean? But it was this whole like, what is going on here? And it was very hard to keep track of what people's arrangements were. So I'd be finding that no one's coming into the office ever, or you'd even request them to come in and then they don't turn up. And so it just became this thing of, we need consistency so that you can actually monitor what's going on, and are they actually abiding by it and coming in or not? And can I know that on that day I can touch base with them in person and just cut through or have that, because there's so much value in being in person, and the conversations you can have around your workstations to make sure everyone's on track and clear of what expectations are. It's much harder to manage when you're remote.
And what do you think there was the main reason for the people to behave in that, like in this way that you are saying?
Look, I think, so what I'm talking about is a lot of the original people that a lot of them have now left. And I think there's a lot of legacy in an organisation like the university. I've never worked in an organisation like this before. It's a very different organisation to a corporate organisation. I think that our employees have a huge sense of entitlement, and just thinking that, they can do almost what they want with things. So we had a number of staff members that didn't have great attitudes towards things either. So they became highly problematic to manage and what have you. And so that was definitely a key contributor. But yeah, I just think there's this general relaxedness that people think. I think people come to the uni thinking it's not a large, complex, demanding organisation. And I'm quite aware of this now because I've been hiring quite a bit into it, to let people know you're not coming here to like pack a picnic lunch and be off. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a large business. The finance deliverables are identical to a corporation. So we cannot miss any of our deliverables. And if we have constant delivery. So it's demanding, yet it's almost like people don't realise that. And then, my head, so I've just, my head of FP&A, who I hired last September, has now left, so only lasted 8 or 9 months. And he left because of those reasons. He thought he was coming to an organisation where he could get work-life balance. I do, I've come here for work-life balance as well, thinking it would be less of an extreme environment to corporate. But my work-life balance isn't thinking I was going to start at 9 and finish at 5 and have an hour for lunch. And my senior person that reported to me had that attitude that, I didn't realise this was going to be so full on, and he couldn't cope with all the deliverables and all the different things. And so he's now left and is going to go for a role that's completely different because he's realised for his own lifestyle, and he's just had a young baby, the last year, that it just doesn't work. And it's like, how could you not know that? Like, that's what finance is. Like, do you know what I mean? So there's this weird, and I've never experienced it before. So I keep saying with HR, because we've had so many staff issues. Right? I don't need to bore you with the detail, but we've had so many staff issues. And I've got to the point, I just said, HR, the universe, this sort of sector seems to attract people that are a little bit problematic to work with, that have these expectations of, I don't have to work hard, there's not going to be super pressure on me, there's not, and that's just not the case. Like, we have stuff we have to deliver, and, all the leadership team are ex-corporate, so Ben Gray, ex-Optus, he has very high standards on things and how things should be packaged and that, so our staff have to deliver that to us so we can give it to him, do you know what I mean? But they don't, so I'm often repackaging things, and so it's just we've got to change the culture in our team, lift the standards, and so much of it's driven by this head. So the head's such an important role to manage that team, to get things working. And unfortunately, because we've had a couple of changes, it's been hugely disruptive. So the head that just left, because he didn't want to come to work really, he had all excuse every week. I'm text constantly. Oh, shit, I can't come to work. This, my wife's sick. Oh, my child's sick. Oh, this is happening. I'm working from home. So he didn't lead by example. So therefore, the staff aren't. So then the staff, I've got trades. I've got this. I've got. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to lead by example. You can't say to someone, "Why are you not in? I wanted you to work with you," or whatever. But their boss isn't. So it's been a thing that's been very hard to change. And until we get someone now that's committed, a strong, stable leader who is mature in how they go about their things, it's very hard to change that next level below. So we're in a bit of a period of flux to try and make that happen. And it's very unfortunate. So we were supposed to have a new head that was supposed to start, 2 weeks ago, and a couple of days before she started, she had a medical diagnosis where she's got to have quite significant treatment. So she's not really now available till January. So now I'm trying to get a consultant in just from Deloitte or what have you to cover us for the budget period. So again, that's disruptive. It's not going to be the person that's setting up the team. We're in survival mode again just to get through it. But it's unfortunate, but it's just the situation. So
is there any other staff issues that you can remember, like that are like issues related to coming to work or not that you had in the past? Like you have said one about your head already, but I'd like to see if there is any other that were like just remember. Yeah, like
why they wouldn't want to come.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I think they don't want to come because they've now gotten used to having their own sort of child, so they drop the children off at school, what have you, pick them up. Just recently just had school holidays that, my child's home from school, so I'm here, and it's all these things where it's like, well, that's not really what our charter is. Like, the expectation now is when you're at work, you're at work. Like in COVID, we had no choice. No one could mind your children, so of course we all juggled like minding our kids, but that's not the case anymore. But I don't think staff get it. Like, I think people have changed their mindset and almost again now feel like there's this entitlement that I can do whatever I want and I'll fit work in around it, and what, you can't. So it's really weird to say, but hang on, we're being flexible. Like, you used to come in 5 days a week. So we're requiring those 3 days, you've got to sort your life out. Like, you're not the primary carer when you're working full-time 3 days coming in. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's issues like that they just, want to be around for that. Then they've got their tradespeople, they make an appointment. Even this week, the manager and the team said to me, Shelley, I won't be in on Thursday because I have an appointment. And I just sort of think, why don't you make your appointment on Wednesday or Friday? Like, why have you made that on a day that's at work? Do you know what I mean? It just goes on and on. They've got plenty of reasons. It just, whatever it is, the car's not working, and we have a joke here, it's raining, so they work from home. Like, do you know what I mean?
I got it. You prioritize to come in person here most of the days?
I do, and because things are a bit crazy, and then there's just so many different things, I'm lately finding that I pretty much come in most days, but I get my flexibility through my start times or what have you. So if I don't have a meeting that requires me to be here by 9, I have to work from home. I miss the busy traffic, and then come in later where I can get here in half the time because there's no traffic, school traffic or what have you. So, but I am a human and I appreciate flexibility. As I said, I've been very fortunate to having flexibility. So I'm not against it. But when things are tough and you're still not landing all your deliverables easy, it's not the time for us all to be like, let's all just work from home and not worry about stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like when there's so much that needs to be done and how we do it with each other needs so much improvement, that requires much more hands on deck and interaction. Do you know what I mean? And so my team in particular has a lot of different issues that are going on, which cannot be resolved if we're all working from home. So at the moment, so I'm at the moment not doing the role that is my role. I'm covering more roles because I don't have a head. I've got to get down to that next level of detail. And there's just so many things that are going on that it's easier for me to be here than not. So at the moment, I'm sacrificing my own personal life with things. I've been quite absent from my family for the last 2 years because I've done whatever hours are required to make sure we don't miss a deliverable. So that's not how I'm saying I want the future to be. Once all the staff have landed in their new roles, are familiar with their roles, with the organisation and all our requirements and have that stability, then I hope we can all fully embrace the 3 days and whether we even change it to something different. I mean, it could be changed to 2 days in the office and 3. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the whole premise of it. It should be flexible based on what your needs actually are at the time. But I think we should definitely be in a couple of days a week because it's a way to allow the building of relationship, culture, bonds. Do you know what I mean? Like I just think if everyone's at home by themselves, like the interactions you have on a screen here are completely different in your engagement level than if you come in person. So I don't think I would ever be a supporter of 5-day-a-week remote working. I just don't think that builds, a fulfilling work culture.
You were saying that the engagement level changed when. Why do you think that the engagement level changed when it's disconnection by like the screen?
Well, I think you can't have the same level of banter even. Like, and I'm a leader that loves to have a joke with my staff and joke around and what have you. So, like, I think now, like, I have weekly my direct reports meeting, and they all come in, in the room next door around the table, and there's just chit chat and banter that goes on, and that builds familiarity with each other. It builds trust that you feel more comfortable. I can reach out and honestly say I need help on something, or I know now what you're doing. I can touch base with you. I can just, do you know what I mean? Whereas when you're remote, and also then everything's going to be booked by meeting in your diary, like it used to be when I didn't come in, my diary was booked the entire time. Like I literally didn't even have time to go to the toilet. And I was lucky that my husband had more flexibility with his work, and his work isn't as crazy at the moment as mine. And he would like bring me my lunch and my drink. I just wouldn't move because I'm on the screen all day. And that's not fun, is it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then you weigh yourself, then you finish it. And then there's no time, like when you go down to your family, there's no like, unwinding. So it's gone from work and then there's no that commute home, which I realised through COVID that the commute's actually a really important time to disconnect, leave, work behind and then arrive.
It makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense. You were talking before of one topic that grabs my attention. Do you think that exists a tension between the flexibility and like the task, the productivity? Do you think that exists into the companies in the nowadays? Do you see it in your company, like the one tension between I have my flexible work, my work-life balance, and like productivity, doing the task? How do you see it?
Well, I've experienced the tension here, but I don't know if that's a set of my circumstances of what's happened in my team. If I was in a different role in a different organisation, would it be a different thing? It could be. I think it's linked to who your staff members are and whether there's tension with how they operate. So as I said before, we had a lot of staff that had legacy issues. And there was absolutely tension around. Then I don't work. I don't work till 10, but then they're not there till 12. And they're important people to deliver something that then you've got to get to the executive group and you can't find them. Like, that's tension and it's stressful because you're always like, are you going to deliver? Like, where are you? Type of thing. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's definitely heavy tension. But having said that, like the previous role that I was in, there wasn't as much tension because I don't know, I feel like the staff were more committed to the task and just delivered more seamlessly than what they do here.
You were saying about the legacy, and how do you feel? How do you feel that this tension exists? Like, how is your experience with this tension here? Like, you have said a few things already about this, but I want to dig deeper a bit more. So, what are examples that you have related to this kind of tension between like practice, productivity, and flexibility that you have seen here?
Well, I think the main one is when things aren't done when they're supposed to be done and they're late. And others are when you follow up with staff and say, well, what have you been working on? And then they'll make out they've worked on something and it's taken forever. And you're like, and you look at it going, how could that possibly have taken that long? And then you're like, okay, so did you not actually know how to approach it? So, if you were here, I could have looked over your shoulder and gone, hey, checked in, like, looks like I still see you're working on that. Oh, and then look at it, oh, you're looking at it the wrong way, you should do it this way or that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it allows less supervision when they're at home, and therefore staff might take, 7 hours to do something that should take them 2 hours, and no one's got visibility over that's what they're actually doing because you're not constantly able to know what they're doing. Sort of thing. So, I think that's, for me, it was just not knowing what they were doing and how they're going about doing it, and the products of output that I'd received wasn't to what it needed to be, and so therefore that's a problematic environment. You need to bring people back in and supervise properly.
And how do you do to know what they are doing, to measure their productivity, to evaluate your team? How do you do it?
Well, I'm the type of manager, I'm results output orientated, so I don't micromanage anyone, and so they know that this has to be done by here and this and that, and if you then that they're not able to give it to you to review at a certain point of time, or they give it to you, it's half done, they've got all these remaining issues, or they give it to you and it's in a format that is like, not even well laid out, or what have you, that's where all these different signals that, hang on, what's going on here. And so we just had last year so many examples where things weren't done in the required timeframes and to the standard that they needed to be, that it just showed that it wasn't working. So it's not like, and as I said, my role is, so I've got 9 direct reports, I've got 8 finance business partners, and then the 1 head of FP&A. So that's a lot of direct reports, which makes it a bit tricky. Everyone has lots of things going on to sort of be involved with them. So my role isn't to be across the FP&A team, which is the, sort of describes that it's the engine room that generates all the baseline of everything that we're reporting on, looking at, and what have you. So if they're not performing well, it affects everyone. And they haven't performed well because they haven't had a strong head and they've had legacy issues of staff that most have now left, and now got new people that need to be trained, developed, and led well, and now we've got no head. So so that's the head's role, is to understand, have those weekly meetings with team, understand what their priorities for the week, what everyone's doing. I don't attend those, so I don't know enough of the detail. But there's certain people I know that are working on things that I'll then know, I will go direct to them in the absence of stuff, you know what I mean? So I know that way, but I don't generally know on a day-to-day basis what they all do. Like, what are they all working on today? I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? So that's not my role to know that level of detail. And because we've had the change in the head, so the head was supposed to get fully across that and then introduce good practices to understand how they're spending their time. So, this part of the month you should be doing this, that, and then and then monitoring that. But we haven't landed that well because he wasn't here long enough, and with his lack of commitment and a lot of absence and different things that have gone on with a lot of staff issues, he never sort of landed that either. So that's a piece that the new head needs to come in and really understand that and make sure that the analysts are doing what they need to do in a way that's good.
These new people that have introduced in your team, the onboarding of them was like remote, was in person. How was it?
Well, so now that we're in the office, now it's in person.
It's in person entirely.
They need to come here. But we'll have things where we recently had a staff member, and what day? So we day started on Monday or Tuesday. I feel like it was like their second day in the office. The head again, who's just left because he wants to be working from home. And I said, you are going to work in the office, aren't you? So that you can. He goes, oh no, I wasn't planning to because and I'm like, so this is the thing. I'm like, I shouldn't even have to tell you that, of course, for the second day that someone comes into the office, that you should be here to continue onboarding them and helping them. Do you know what I mean? So when you ask me, it's a hybrid model because, the first day will greet you and then you're on your own if it's a day that I work from home. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's just the individuals and their mentality, because then there's other people that are more junior and then they have been here more often to do. So it's just this mixed bag. People's and it's people's own selfish desires are overriding what actually is the more pragmatic thing and common sense thing to do from a work perspective. Like obviously, if you have a new work person, surely the first week that they're here at least, you'd be in helping them. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And did you have to onboard some people that arrived here like during the time that you were in the lockdown, that you needed to do were forced to do the onboarding remotely? Did you have any people that was like this?
How do you think? I know in my previous role I definitely did. But here did I, or did we end up managing with everything? I'm pretty sure that here the timing of when people have started, I feel like most of them were still in an environment where they could come in at least one or two. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it was completely remote. Whereas in my previous role, we had people that was completely remote.
And how do you think that it can impact to do the onboarding in people like remotely and to do them in person? Have you seen any results and impacted the results of the people?
Well, I think as you know, like just that when you meet somebody in person, you immediately build a different rapport with them than meeting them on a screen. So, like I know when I joined Macquarie, I was here for 3 weeks in person, and then the lockdown happened. So for me, that was obviously not ideal, but it was great that I actually had 3 weeks at least to have met people in real life, so that then I already formed a relationship with most people, and then I was working with them remotely. So I found that was better. But I mean, as I said, in COVID, it proves that everything basically is possible to do remotely. It's just not the ideal way. So of course you can survive and do it that way, but you just don't build those relationships. It's harder. You feel more isolated to work out, how do I do something? Who do I need to go through? How does the connections in an organisation structure work? Like who's the who in the do that you see, when you're in here and you see Andrew Steers walking around, oh yeah, he's the head of, he's director of financial operations at home. They never know what he's like. Do you know what I mean? Like that whole aspect, which is a huge part of, how you work. It's harder to establish.
Have you seen any differences in the development curve of new employees in some of them that you have worked with?
Look, that's probably hard to say, because I think at the end of the day we get there. I think it would have been an easier journey if it wasn't remote. But I mean, a lot of our tasks, like a lot of what we do is task orientated. So people should have enough intuitive to know, I'll go to the files and work out, replicate or roll something forward a lot as well. Do you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, they have managed, but if I'm comparing that to a normal trajectory, they're in the office, how different would it have been? I don't know.
I totally understand. And if you have said a bit already, but if you have to enumerate how are the negative and the positive aspects of being working in person and of being working remotely. How can you measure that to see the positive?
So what do you mean? Are you saying like, is it?
The employees working in person here, but also the person they have the opportunity to work remotely.
Yeah.
If you have to highlight what are the positive and negative aspects of each.
Oh, right, the positive and negative of each. So obviously working remotely does give you that flexibility, I think, that makes, particularly for full-time workers, feeling like it's not as burdensome a full-time week. So if they allows you to exercise in the morning or do something, rather than, you save that commute time or what have you, both morning and afternoon. So I think it allows you to be more present at home and visible. I think particularly with families that ordinarily, your children see you around more, knowing that you're present in the house versus you've left at the crack of dawn, commuted to work and then you're in the office all day, commute and then see them 5 minutes before bed. I think it allows all of that. So I think that's why I'm very happy with flexible work to embrace that, because I think it does allow overall a better outcome for society and families, I think. And obviously then, so it saves the commute. So there's cost advantages with that if people aren't having to pay for their commute. And I think it, in the end, allows them to have more time then to decide what they want to do with. So it then gives you more time for leisure, or you save the commute time and you use that extra 2 hours to keep working because you're flat out, then do you know what I mean? Like, it still makes it overall net your time should be better. So, and then the negatives, as I said, I think it just is, it's harder to maintain a good culture and that relationship bonding. I think it's harder to be able to fully understand how staff are operating, like to get that sense of, are they doing okay? Are they getting through their work okay? How stressed are they, or what have you? I think remote working removes a lot of those sort of check-ins, checks and balances and what have you.
Yeah, I got it. You said also that when you are working from home, your husband also has like a flexible work arrangement. How is it for him and for you?
Yeah, so I'm very lucky at the moment. So I could have a very different view had his role not been what it is. So where he works now, after COVID, they actually made a decision that that worked out financially better for their organisation not to be in the office all the time. So they had a really expensive lease, a beautiful building right in the harbour foreshore. They've now moved back more into the cheap part of the city, much smaller office space, and there's no real requirement to go in. So it's there, it's kept there for when they have clients and what have you, they need to have a base or what have you. Some workers, because obviously depending on people's home life too, right? You might be in a small house and there's no study or no space to actually work, or you could be in a good house. So some people prefer to go to work because what their home setup is. So some people at work, they do go in, but in general, there's no expectation to go in. So we're fortunate we just built the new house 4 years ago or something, and so we've got the space. He's got an office at home, so he just uses that. And so, he doesn't have to go in at all. It's only when he really has clients that he's got to go and visit, and he travels for that. So when he's at home, and then he takes, because a lot of the clients are overseas, so he can do morning or later night calls. So his day is super flexible. I mean, he's now got ultimate flexibility. So he's been able to pick up doing all the kids' stuff. And so he does a lot of their running around. I don't do any anymore. We've done this huge backflip. So my job's become intense and just and I just work all the time. And he now has the complete flexibility that I sort of had years ago, which has been kind of nice. He's been able to get those different relationships with the kids. But had we both had the same sort of work, then they wouldn't have worked. Like, it wouldn't have been sustainable at all. So do you know what I mean? So this is the thing, everything's up to the person's private situation in terms of what house they live in, what their partner does. Do you know what I mean? As to how much you can do or not do. So for me, I've been allowed to focus on work because he's had the flexibility at the moment.
Normally, yeah, I was going to actually ask exactly that. Well, how do you normally manage the interaction to focus on work, like between both of you, and how is it that you're saying that he's more flexible now? So how is this interaction? How is this negotiation? I can say there is you have at home,
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, because COVID made his role quieter as well, because by the nature of people not being able to travel and what have you, so he naturally could pick up the slack. But now that things are returning more to normal and he's busier, there's tension, don't you worry. So that's the problem, which is why, trying to sort out what's happening so I can actually have a private life as well. Because now he's busy, but he's still juggling everything and he still prepares most of the meals and that. And so don't worry, he has his cranky pants. So who knows how long it'll last, but it's just unfortunate. My boss is Ben and he fully understands it, and he's concerned. I've let him know that what I've done here isn't sustainable, and I don't want it to continue because it is a huge cost to myself, and it's not something that can just keep going. But unfortunate things keep happening in my space, which are preventing you from achieving nirvana. Like, everything's working. So all that means is my husband constantly is like, I still can't do anything because I've got no option but to keep doing what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Well, I do have an option. I could just let everything fail, and then that would be bad. But I don't, and so yes, it's taxing on my personal life because then my husband has to try and juggle it. He's getting more difficult for him to do it.
And you see this similar situation in your team as well, in your team members as well. You see that they like some of them struggle to have like more time available to work. How do you see it in your team?
Yeah, I know, it's interesting. I mean, I've got a very different relationship with the finance business partners than to my head of FP&A, and my expectations from each of those groups are probably different. I have a much more obvious impact to me on the FP&A, the head side, than the finance business partners, because the nature of their roles are more ad hoc based, depending on what's actually happening in the faculty or portfolio and what the leadership teams are doing. So they obviously have a certain amount of repeat work that happens month in, month out. But then a lot of the rest of their time is based on advisory and support and whatever's sort of happening. So I don't have constant deliverables from them. I don't say, you've got to do this, that, where's it at? Whereas FP&A team, I do. So the majority of them, and if you spoke to they come and go as they want. They send me messages constantly. Oh, I've got this today. My husband's this surgery, or and it doesn't really impact me. And I'm like, it's fine. Yep. And I know that ultimately what I need from them, they do deliver. So they kind of do it. So I know a lot of them have good flexibility in how they work it out with their husband or wives or what have you. That's fine. So I haven't really seen any issues. The more issues are on the FP&A side. And again, it's because of the nature of the work deliverable that then makes me feel like how they need to work is different. And that's what I'm saying, that the whole thing about flexible work is it's about the nature of what your work is and how does that work. So I've got two very different views in my team. One, do knock yourself out, do whatever you want. The other, actually, you need to be. Yeah.
I don't know so much about the role, but how different is the nature of the task that demands them to or stay here more and another don't stay that much? How different is it, and why do you prioritize that some of them are here or not?
So as I was saying, it's just the nature of the deliverables. So I know the business partners are absolutely here when they need to be. So if they've got meetings, with me, they're here, I see them. And then I know that they're present when they meet with their stakeholders. And I know that the regular work that they have each month of presenting the monthly results to them and trying to provide insights or what have you. I know that they've all got that set up, how the stakeholders are happy with that interaction. So if that is in person or remote, because if the stakeholder wants to be remote or what have you. So all of that, I know it's okay. And as I said, I am actually a results oriented person. So if they then are working with me on certain pieces of work, as long as they give it to me within the required times or what have you, then that's fine. A few of them have had different issues, and so we've definitely worked together in the office. Again, sitting by the side, looking at what they're doing, how they're approaching things, working through their files and things is much easier in person than separate and looking at a screen and trying to see where they're, because even in these meeting rooms, you put stuff up and you can point to things, and do you know what I mean? Like, it's just easier to run through. Whereas then the FP&A team are much more task orientated with lots of tasks that have to be done, sort of thing. We are their main stakeholder. If the business partners are, they don't have external stakeholders that they work with. So therefore, being present for us, I want them to be serving us and serving the business partners. And because that hasn't been working so well, that's why then we need that presence to then try and improve our interactions with each other, improve sharing knowledge between each other. Because if an analyst is sitting next to another analyst, if one analyst has been here for 5 years and one's been here for 2 weeks, that analyst that's been here for 2 weeks can then just say to the analyst next to you, hey, how do you approach this? Or hey, do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to allow that to happen. Whereas if that analyst that's been here for 2 weeks is sitting at home trying to do something, stressing out, they don't have a relationship with that other one, how do they reach out to bounce ideas, just to be like point, I'll just go do this or what, do you know what I mean? Like, and that's the cut through that's achieved when you're in the office.
I got it. And are you? I don't know. In your plan, there is anyone that you're gonna onboard for the next few weeks or few?
Yeah.
Yes, because I like to see with you the possibility of me to be together in this onboarding process, for me to see how has been in this context that you guys are doing, if it's possible.
Well, I mean, so on Monday we've got someone that starts. So that's an analyst. That's a junior level that's starting work. And yeah, I don't know. That's a great example. So she's coming in reporting to a senior analyst that we've got here that's on a 6-month contract, and he's only been here now for 6 weeks or something himself, a couple of months. So yeah, I touched base with him earlier in the week saying, so are you ready to onboard? Like when I onboard people, I sort of have a little induction thing and their meetings, but how they do it. And I just was like, are you ready? You've got all the laptop, everything arranged, the access. And he's like, yes, looking that through, we had an interview today because we've got to hire another analyst for him. And he's forgotten which analyst is which. And so I'm thinking, how ready are you for her to start on Monday if you were thinking she was doing the other job, not this job?
Oh my gosh.
Like, we've just had this conversation because the person that starts on Monday, she's doing this, not that. So who knows how he'll onboard her because he's new. So anyway, that's happening, and then I'm still trying to hire one other analyst. Again, it's going to report to this guy. So yeah, we're in interviews at the moment.
Yeah, but like when you find the one best example, like I'd like to ask you, maybe if it's not now, but like in a couple of weeks or months, it's going to be a pleasure if it was possible as well.
Yeah, because I think the one on Monday is too soon, too raw, and I don't want to jeopardize the onboarding experience. It's already I think she's a good recruit, but she's coming into an unfortunate situation where really she's reporting into a 6-month contractor. Who the 6-month contractor is super keen to get a permanent role. The jury's out whether I would do that. So there's weird dynamics going on there, and I wouldn't want to add anything more weird
it makes
to
sense.
the mix, because I actually want her to be successful and really love being here. And like weird.
It makes sense. It totally
down
makes
the
sense.
track, and then as he settles in a bit more on that, maybe the next one we could.
No problem. No problem as well. And also, if there is any, like you were saying, there is a risk maybe of in the future have any change in the work arrangement. So I like to ask as well the permission if it's possible. I'm asking a lot of things. I'm sorry for that, but I can maybe like to participate of those meetings as well, like with the team. If it, I don't know how is the possibility for
Which
you.
meetings, like the direct reports meetings?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That
So
you're.
they're in-person meetings.
Hmm?
They're just an in-person meeting. So they come in here, the next door, we all sit around a table. I mean, sometimes if people are on that day not 100% well or they had something, then we could have one or two remote. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. But to a personal, it can be a personal meeting. I can come here anyway,
Yeah.
just for me to participate. It's just part like when we are saying that, like we are planning to make a shadowing, maybe to get like close to the teams to understand how is the dynamic of the meetings, how is the interaction of the people, would be something that was going to be interesting for us as well. So I don't know. Imagine that you might have like meetings weekly maybe.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And then I'd like to ask for a permission
Yeah,
if
sure.
it's possible for me to participate of this.
Yeah, okay.
How often do you, when is it normally?
So Tuesday afternoons.
Tuesday afternoons.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, if it's possible, we can follow up this conversation as well. And also the third thing that was the permission is for the future, like we make a follow-up conversation again, maybe in the future, in a couple of months, we have a follow-up conversation. Okay. So, and I like to open if you have like, if you want me to clarify anything related to it. So I'm open to clarify for you in now. Okay. Do you have any questions related to what we are doing?
Probably. We could touch base next time then, because I'm just conscious I've got to go to do a few things now. But maybe next time we catch up with you, but give a little update on, what are the different things that you've been hearing.
Perfect.
What have you? That would be interesting. We don't need to cover that now. I know you're still meeting with people anyway.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I'm gonna keep your contact. We have I have your contact, and we keep in touch. Okay.
No,
Thank you, Shelley, for that.
no,
It was really productive.
Well, it's funny the different takes you'll get on things, depending on the experience